Alright, this help video is all about everyone's favorite topic, taxes. So I have a customer here who is currently exempt, but it turns out I'm going to have to start charging them taxes. And so when I look at their location, they're located in Birmingham. And if I come into my routeman and I hit edit customer and I look at my tax entity choices, I currently don't have a Birmingham tax. Now they are in the state of Alabama and they are in Jefferson County, but I know that Birmingham actually has a separate tax on top of those two. The way that you want to set your taxes up in routeman is very specific to the location of the customer. So we're going to set it up in layers. So if they're in the state of Alabama, they're going to get the Alabama state tax, but then within certain counties, they may have other taxes. And so by creating different layers, we can customize it to each customer. And so in this case, because I don't have a Birmingham city tax yet, I'm going to show you how I would create that. So if I come up here to the tax menu tab, you have three different categories: tax types, tax details, and tax entities. Tax types, you're usually just going to have non-tax and sales tax or just tax. But in some cases you might have a different category like rental tax. So this would be if you have to charge a different rate of tax when you rent something to a customer rather than when you sell something to a customer. If we come and look at tax entities, that was the list that I am picking from when I'm looking at my customer tab. And so if you look here, I don't have a Birmingham sales tax, and that's what I'm wanting to create. But if I look at Alabama, it shows that if I have a customer in the Alabama tax entity category, they're either going to be charged 4% for a regular sales tax item or 0% if they're exempt. And so that would be the Alabama non. If I look at Shelby County, that's where Pelham is a part of, where I'm located right now. Alabama's sales tax is 4%, but then my county charges 4% as well. So up here you can see that there's an 8% total. And then if I look at Pelham, which is specifically the city that KCS is located in, we add another layer. So we have Alabama 4, Shelby County 4, and then Pelham 1 for a total of 9% that I would charge my customers if they're not tax exempt. So this is the kind of situation I'm trying to create with Birmingham. Well, if I look at it, again, I would be charging the Alabama sales tax, and then Birmingham is part of Jefferson County. So if I click on that, Jefferson County only charges 1. So it would charge 5% total. Now I need to go in and create a Birmingham sales tax. So that is 4%, meaning I will end up with 9% total. But right now I don't have a Birmingham sales tax detail to enter into a list. So what I actually need to do is, remember, this is tax entities. I need to go back out, so I'm going to hit return, and I'm going to enter a tax detail right here. Now this gets a little bit confusing, but this is where I'm creating the details that I can add in layers to the tax entities. So here I'm going to hit add, and I'm going to enter Birmingham. My description will be Birmingham. The percentage will be 4, and I'm going to choose tax. And then here I will enter Birmingham, and just to keep it consistent, I will do underscore non, and in the next box I will enter Birmingham, and I've entered them in my system like this, dash non, and I will say 0 and non. Okay, so I would hit OK, and now that's going to be saved, and I'll be able to go and add it to my list in just a moment. Now if you have just one or two of these to do, the way I entered it there is fine. If you'd like to do many of them, it's actually quicker and easier to use this auto add button. And what this does is, if I enter the city name or the county name or the state name, it automatically creates a matching non, and since I have a rental tax type category, it will also create a third one, that's the rental tax. So just to give you an example of how this would look, let's say I wanted to do the city of Hoover in Alabama. I would say auto add, and you can see the different types it's going to make down here, and I would just enter Hoover, and then I would enter the tax amount right here. Let's say that was 2%, and then let's pretend that Hoover rental tax was 1%. I would enter it there and submit, and it would ask if I was sure, and yes. And so now when I look at my list, Hoover now has these 3 details to pick from. Okay, so now that I've got my Birmingham detail that I can use to create the correct tax entity for the city of Birmingham, I'm going to hit return. And I'm going to come back to the entities, and remember, in the list I still don't have Birmingham, so I'm going to hit add, and I'm going to say Birmingham, and you can name these however it makes sense for you. If it's hard to remember which cities are in which states or which counties belong with which states, you could name this Birmingham, Jefferson County, Alabama, just so that it's very easy for you to see from the list the different layers that are involved in this entity. Okay, so now I have the city of Birmingham, and I've got to add in the state, so I will start with Alabama, and OK. And remember, I have to give it the non version as well, so that if I sell to this customer and for some reason don't have to charge sales tax, I have to be able to give my driver the option for a 0. So now I'm going to add the county, which is Jefferson County. I'm going to add the tax first and then the non. Jefferson County non. Okay. So you can see at this point it's 5%, and then I have to add the city of Birmingham. And one more time I will add the non-sales tax version as well. Okay, so now I've created a tax entity for the city of Birmingham that includes all layers, and it totals up 9%, so I can see that that is correct. One of the reasons that we want to create these layers, instead of just going in and creating the city of Birmingham has 9%, that would be simpler. But one day, if they change, let's say they change the county tax to be 1.5%, then you would have to go back to each and every customer and find each and every customer in that county and change their total tax amount. In this way, if Jefferson County one day changed their tax rate to 1.5%, and I have tons of different customers across different cities and within the county, I could go and just change that one detail, and it will affect all those customers. One edit would take care of all of their changes. Okay, so at this point, I hit return. And now when I come to my customer, which was Bell's Foods, Okay. Instead of being exempt, I need to edit that customer, and I come up here and I can choose Birmingham, and then I also want to give them an exempt possibility as a secondary tax entity, so that if my driver were delivering there and there was something that they weren't supposed to charge tax for, they can choose to take that off and they would be exempt for that. Okay, so at this point, any invoice that I create for this customer will show that 9% sales tax. Remember, they were exempt before. So if I come in here and I created an invoice, okay, you can see that they're going to be charged tax automatically. This checkbox is defaulting to being on, and they're being charged 9% sales tax automatically. Okay, and I'm just going to save invoice and return. Okay, so that's how you do the standard tax setup. Now, what would happen if you had to go back and charge tax for something that was sold in the past and you didn't have the taxes set up, or you didn't know you were supposed to charge tax for them? Or what would happen if you charged tax and you had to pay the customer back because you weren't supposed to charge tax for that? Well, that's called a tax-only invoice. So if the sale has already happened, you don't need to go back and edit the invoice and change what happened in history. What you can do is set up a product that's specifically for this purpose. So if you look at products, I'm going to show you the product that I have set up. It's called tax only. And you want to use this exactly, set up as tax only in all caps. And you can create the product description as whatever you like, whatever makes sense for your customer to see on that line. You may want to ask your accountant what they would like to see on that line. What's the correct thing? The product type can be anything you need it to be. The tax type will be tax or sales tax, whichever one you have. And then in looking in these options here, we just want it to be dock available. We don't want it to be route available. That would mean that the driver could actually select this while making an invoice when they're making a delivery, and we don't want that to happen. It doesn't need to be hotshot available. So really, this is the only checkbox that should be marked over here besides active. Okay, and then the price schedule. When you're creating this product, you'll select this button, create a price schedule for this product, and leave it named as tax only. And then when you choose the price, you'll keep it at 0. All right, now that we have our tax only product created, let's pretend that we have to go back and charge this particular customer some tax that wasn't charged in the past, and we need to make that correction. So we can come up here to new invoice, and we will choose new detail, and we'll enter a quantity of 1. We're going to leave it on a normal sales type, and for the product, we're going to choose our tax only product. Okay, at this point, the charge tax checkbox should be entered, and we're going to enter the quantity of the amount of tax that they owe. So whatever that is, you'll key it in here and hit OK. If they're not paying for it at the time that you're making this invoice, it's important that you come in here and paid on site should be 0. If they are, then of course you would enter that quantity there. But it's very easy, like with this customer that I have right here, they're a COD customer, so it's automatically assuming, routeman is assuming that that amount is being paid on site. But I would enter a 0 right there and save invoice and return, and then now you have an invoice showing that this is a tax correction, an adjustment that you're trying to make up for. Now, if there was tax charged in the past and for some reason you have to go back and make a correction that is actually refunding the tax amount, what we would do is the same process, only here we would enter new detail. Again, we do in number 1. It's still on the normal sales type, and we would choose our tax only product. But here in the box, we would actually enter a negative amount. So negative 354, let's say. Okay. And now at this point, it's going to show as a negative, which is actually a refund or a credit back to them. Again, consider whether it should be counted as paid on site. Well, no, we're crediting them back. So when I save the invoice, that's actually going to show as a credit invoice in this case. If you have any questions about taxes, you're certainly welcome to give us a call. KCS is not an accounting firm, but we try to give you all the tools to be able to charge taxes correctly and refund taxes as needed so that you can take care of your business. But feel free to give us a call, and we'll do everything we can to try to walk you through the steps of doing it correctly.